Okay, so in this video, what we're going to be talking about is grade averages. So we're going to try and figure out how to average all of our scores for a semester or for a year into a final grade. So it says when a weighted average is applied to a set of numbers, more importance or weight is placed on some components of the set. Your final average in this class is probably an example of a weighted average. Consider two grading systems for determining your final class average. Each system is a weighted average for measures that include test grades, final exam grade, homework, and class participation. So each system has a percentage or a weight for each of these categories. And depending on how important it is, will tell you how high of a percentage it is. So in system one, test average is the highest, it's 40%, right? So that's pretty important. But then it also gives 25% for homework and final exam grade. So it's saying they're kind of important, but not as much as test average. In system 2, 60% test average, so it's really important. And final exam grade and homework isn't as much. Class participation is the same in each, though. So it says if your values are the following, which grading system do you prefer? So what we want to do is we want to insert each of these values into these systems that they have for us and try and figure out which one is better, which one will give us a higher grade. So in system number 1, we have 84 test average is 40% of our grade. So what we'd have to do, now 40% as a decimal, that's 0.4, right? So when we're doing the system, we're going to be using the decimal version of each of these percentages. So in system number 1, test average is 84. We're going to multiply that by 0.4 because test average is 0.4. Final exam grade was a 68 times 0.25. Homework grade is a 90 times 0.25. And then class participation is a 95 times 0.1. And if we average all these together, we should get, where am I? We should get 82.6. Okay, and let's see what system 2 looks like. So system number 2, we've got 84 times, instead of 0.4 this time, we got 0.6. So 0.6 plus 68 times 0.15 plus 90 times 0.15 plus 95 times 0.1. And these average out to be 83.6. So based on these two systems, what we can say is that system number 1 is not as good as system number 2. So based on these scores, we can say that system number 2 is the one we want because our grade is higher. Okay? So let's change it up a bit. It says if you score 10 points higher on the final exam, how does the final grade average change under each system? So instead of having a 68 as our grade average, we're going to have 78, 10 points higher, right? So in system number 1, we've got all the other numbers stay the same. So we got 84 times 0.4 plus 78 times 0.25 plus 90 times 0.25 plus 95 times 0.1. And if we average all this out, we should equal 85.1. For system 2, we should have 84 times 0.6 plus 78 times 0.25 plus 90 times 0.25 plus 95 times looking at the wrong system. So instead of 0.25, we've got 0.15 for each of these. And then 0.1 for the class participation. If we do that, we're actually going to get 85.1. So in this scenario, if we had 10 points higher on that average, or excuse me, the final exam grade, we would actually get the same. So we can just say they're the same. There is no difference in either of these final grades right here. So you can choose either one and you'll still get the same grade. So it says if you score 6 points lower, so instead of 10 points higher, we got 6 points lower on the final, what would your grades be? Which one would be better, system 1 or 2? So in system 1, we're going to have 84 times 0.4 plus 62 times 0.25 plus 90 times 0.25 plus 95 times 0.1. And if you equal all those out, you should get 81.1. Okay, and then system number 2, it says we would get 84 times 0.6 this time, plus 62 times 0.15, plus 90 times 0.15, plus 95 times 0.1. And this would average out to be 82.7. So in this case, we can say number 2 is better. Okay, so right there. Okay, and then part 4, question 4, it says, use the following information to find your final course average in each grading system. So in this case, it doesn't give us a test grade average, it just gives us our test grades themselves. So to find the average, what we have to do is we have to take all these and add them together and then divide by the number of tests we took. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tests. So we're going to add these up and then divide by 4. So it would be 80 plus 74 plus 82 plus 88 divided by 4, and you would get a test average of 81. And so now we've got the same info as we always have. So what we can do is we can start working on system number 1, which would be 81, because that's our test average, times 0.4, plus 84 times 0.25, plus 90 times 0.25, plus 95 times 0.1. And these average out to be 85.4. And then number 2, system number 2, we would get 81 times 0.6 plus 84 times 0.15 plus 90 times 0.15 plus 95 times 0.1. And these average out to be 84.2. So in this scenario, what we would say is that number 1 is better, right? It's a higher grade. So number 1 is better. Okay. Question number 5, it says your averages are the following. And so we've got test average, homework, and class participation. And you'll notice that one of these are missing. It's the final exam grade. So final exam, we don't know what it is. And it tells us what grade do you need on the final exam to earn a final grade average of at least 87 in each grading system. So what I want to do first, I want to set up the left side of my equation. So this is my whole left side right here, all of this stuff, left side of the equal sign. I'm going to set this up like I normally do. So test average is an 85. So for system number 1, test average 85 times 0.4 plus, now final exam grade. We don't know what it is, right? So what we can do is we can label it X. If we don't know something, we'll label it X. So X times 0.25 plus homework, which is a 90 times 0.25, and then class participation, which is 95 times 0.1. And now this is a little bit different. Instead of saying, it could have said, what do we need to get on the final exam to get a final grade of 87? If that were the case, then we would put an equal sign. But we're not looking at just 87. We're looking at everything that is at least 87. So we're looking at 87, 88, 89, 90, all the way up to 100, right? So Another way you could say this, instead of saying at least 87, you could say things that are greater than or equal to 87. Okay? So the way we could represent that is the greater than or equal to symbol. So we're going to have greater than or equal to 87. And now we solve it just like we normally would. So if you simplify this, you should get, if you multiply all this out, you should get 66 plus 0.25x is greater than or equal to 87. And if you solve for x, remember solving means get x by itself, you should get x is greater than or equal to 84. So what this means is that we need to make at least an 84 on the final exam to get a final grade average of at least 87. Okay, and now number two, system number two, we can say the same setup, just different percentages. So number two is 85 times 0.6 plus, remember we don't know the final exam grade, so we're going to label it x, times 0.15 plus 90 times 0.15 plus 95 times 0.1. And then again, it's greater than or equal to 87. And again, we're just going to solve this by simplifying. So we should get 74 plus 0.15x is greater than or equal to 87. If we move the 74 over, we should get 0.15x is greater than or equal to 13. And then from there, we can say that x is greater than or equal to 86.7. So in system number two, we'd have to make at least an 86.7 to make an 87 or greater on our final grade. And then the last question, what weights do you assign to each component to set up a grading system? Each weight must be at least 10%. Why do you think your grading system would be fair and effective? So I'm going to give you a second to solve this one, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay, so this one is subjective. You can make it anything you want so long as each category is at least 10%. And just give a quick reason as to why you think that is a good system. So in my system, so remember we have test average, we have final exam, and we also have homework and class participation. So in my system, I think that things you do on a regular basis are more important than one-time things. So like test average, those are pretty big items. So I would say 50% of your grade is predicated on your testing average. Final exam, though a final exam is important and it covers a lot of material, I don't think that it should be as heavy as test average because it's just a one-time thing. You take it once for the year and you're done. Testing average is for the entire school year. So because of that, I'm going to say that the final exam is only worth 15% of your final grade. Homework, though it doesn't cover as much material as tests do, I still think that it's a daily occurring or semi-daily, semi-regularly occurring thing or activity. I think they should hold at least some weight. So I'll say that, I keep wanting to do decimals. I'm going to say that homework would be 25%. And then the last thing is class participation. I think this is important, but not as helpful in terms of assessing one's knowledge on the actual material as, say, these top three. And so what I would say is the last remaining 10% goes towards class participation. So you can make many systems that you want. It's just dependent upon, the only rule they give you is that at least 10%. So you can make it however you think see fit.